Lemon Amiga presents a Playtime video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome to another Lemon Amiga Game Guide review. This time we'll be taking a look at the 1988 game Boogie Boy, created by the Tatsumi Corporation and licensed by Elite. So let's dive straight in and check this game out. There are 5 tracks on Boogie Boy: the off-road, north, east, west and south course. And all you have to do in this review driving game is to get from A to B, to get from the start point through the time check gates through to the goal, and along the way you must pick up flags and drive through gates which give you a number of points as indicated by the banner on top of the gates. And when you get to the end of the level, your bonuses will be totaled and then it's on to the high score table. So this game is a conversion of the original Taito arcade game called Speed Boogie in the US and Boogie Boy in the rest of the world, which was developed by Tatsumi in 1985. You can see the widescreen version of the game as featured in the panoramic 3-screen display of the original cockpit arcade machine. And there is also a condensed single-screen cabinet known as Boogie Boy Junior, from which the Amiga conversion was largely derived. And apart from the smaller graphics and the lack of dotted lines on the road, of which you can see were present in the ZX Spectrum version, I think the Amiga version is comparable to the arcade machine, and many people say the Commodore 64 version plays better and has faster frame rates and that kind of thing. But looking at these screenshots, the 64 version is certainly playable and it's certainly a favourite of mine. The Amstrad CPC version, with its tiny graphics and minimal sound, is probably the weakest version of Boogie Boy, and the Sinclair Spectrum version is actually the most faithful to the arcade out of all of these. Apart from the speed, of course, the Spectrum had the biggest graphics. But let's take a look at the off-road again. This is the 3rd lap and I'm collecting all these bonuses there. When you collect all 5 flags you will gain an extra 1,000 points, and you will also enter a flag bonus round where additional flags will give you an increased bonus, and any flags in any order can be picked up in that flag bonus round to increase your flag total. And of course also the footballs as well. The footballs will give you an extra 2,000 score whenever you pick those up, so it's very important to get those footballs to get the biggest score. And of course the time gates as well. Collecting those time gates will give you 2 seconds at the end of each lap it is on the off-road, or on the end of each section, and they will also give you 500 points credit for picking those up. I'd certainly say the off-road course is the easiest out of the 5 tracks, and that certainly gives you plenty of time, and so collecting those time bonuses isn't as vital as collecting it on later courses, as we shall see as we play through all of the 5 courses in the game. So on the off-road you can probably get away with missing 1 or 2 time gates, and it certainly allows for a number of crashes as well, and you can still complete the course even after missing 3 or 4 time gates and crashing a number of times, which is certainly great given that the player will find rocks in the middle of the road and on bridges, and colliding with any of the scenery will of course slow the car down and make the car flip over and crash. And if you want to get to the end of any stage, it's certainly important to bear in mind that a crash will probably take 3 or 4 seconds to recover from. A flip over, or if you crash into the scenery and explode, that will take maybe 10 seconds to drag the screen across and reset the player back on the track. And if you fall into the water as well, if you fall off one of the bridges, that will lose maybe 7 or 8 seconds as well. So bearing in mind that if you collect all 3 time gates on every section, that only gives you 6 seconds. If you crash once and have a major off, that will wipe out any time bonus that you've managed to gain, and you'll be in detriment for the rest of the race. So I suppose the big rule, the main rule of this game is not crashing. And if you don't crash, then you certainly stand a very good chance of getting a high score, and if you do crash, well, not so much. On the off-road course, you won't find too many hidden footballs, and really the only hidden football is the one which appears in the rock on the bridge, which appears in stage 5. But apart from that, at the end, when you reach the goal, all your bonuses will be totaled up, and it will give you a special bonus for completing each of the stages and for reaching the goal, and then you can enter your high score onto the high score table. The off-road, the maximum score you can probably attain is maybe 110,000, so to get 101, that's not so bad on that course. So let's jump into the north and check that one out. So the north course features a number of graphics background themes. As we start in the Northern Territories, we'll find ice on the roads and white and grey background graphics there. You won't find any dual layer of parallax scrolling hills in the background, not like Super Hang-On, which we reviewed last year. And the graphics, you can certainly say, are ported more or less from the arcade version and redrawn in the Amiga style. The graphics aren't amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but they are certainly functional, and the frame rate, even though it's probably maybe 8 frames a second, is adequate just about on this game. This is the Amiga 500 version you're looking at the moment. This is the Amiga 500 speed, so even though you might say that the game runs quite jumpily, it's certainly not a smooth ride playing it on the Amiga 500 version. The speed at least makes the game playable, and certainly makes the game fun. You might notice I'm driving on 2 wheels here, and colliding with a tree stump or a small boulder in the road will make the buggy drive on 2 wheels, and you will find that also acts as a score multiplier as well. The flags collected or the gates driven through on 2 wheels will be multiplied, and also if you hit a log, you'll be thrown into the air, and any flags or gates collected whilst in the air will also be collected for a multiple score. And it's certainly difficult sometimes driving on 2 wheels, because any excessive manoeuvres will make the car crash or flip over, so it's important to drive very carefully on 2 wheels. I remember on the Commodore 64 version it was possible to land on 4 wheels again simply by tapping the joystick in the direction of the raised wheels, and they will be landed. But on the Amiga version it isn't possible to manually land the car. The car will automatically land after a certain number of seconds, maybe 10 seconds or so, driving on 2 wheels. Otherwise the player will just have to find a log which will send them into the air, and then they will land on all 4 wheels again. And as we wind our way through the polar landscapes of the Northern Territories on this northern course, just a little background about the game. This conversion was coded by Martin Ward, who started out on his Amiga journey converting Buggy Boy in 1988, before using the same graphics engine to create Live and Let Die in 1989, also for Elite, which was called Aquablast in the US. And then he coded Paperboy in 1989, and Martin Ward also converted the Commando arcade conversion for Elite in '89, and also he went on to code World Championship Soccer for Elite in 1990. Buggy Boy was also co-coded with Martin by a guy named Richard Frankish, who started out on the Amiga with his conversion of Ikari Warriors in 1987, before moving on to work on Revenge of the Mutant Camels 2 with Jeff Minter in '88. He worked with Martin Ward on the Paperboy conversion in 1989, and also on Ghosts and Goblins in 1990. And some people might remember Richard Frankish as the guy behind the Space Harrier conversions as well, Space Harrier 1 and 2 in 1989. And certainly with those guys working together, I think they created a very playable Amiga conversion of the game. Maybe not as graphics intensive as the arcade version, but certainly a step up from the very minimal graphics of the Commodore 64 version and the Amstrad CPC, which, although they might have been faster to play and smoother, particularly the Commodore 64, again I find the Amiga version is very playable and probably the best compromise, the mix of both worlds. And there was also an Atari ST conversion, which is identical to the Amiga graphically, and the sound was very diabolical once again on the ST version, even though the gameplay, as I say, looked identical. So definitely the Amiga version has the best sound, although I have to say the music in this game is pretty dire, to be honest. When you complete the game, the music will play, and it's a pretty dire conversion of the arcade completion music, and the player will be keen to skip that by pressing the right mouse button. If the player wishes to pause the game at any stage, they can press the left mouse button, and if they want to save their current high score to the high score table, they just have to press the right mouse button, and that will take them all the way there. So here we are, this is the North Chorus completed, and a little jump at the end gives us a few more vital points, and the scores are totaled up. Probably the highest score you can get on the North Chorus is maybe 135,000, something in the region. So to gain 135,000 on this playthrough is amazing. Maybe a little more score can be attained if you are an absolute machine at this game, an absolute perfectionist, and you'll certainly find the score really racks up there if you collect the flags and collect as many flag bonuses as possible. And as we move now onto the East course, we will also see collecting those hidden footballs as well really rack up the score. The footballs in this game are worth 2,000 points each, and you might find those lying around the levels, but you'll also find footballs hidden inside some of the large grey boulders which line some of the tracks, and the only way the player will get to know whether a rock contains a football is to collide with that, and 95% of the time you'll collide with a rock and simply wipe out, and nearly 5% of the time you'll find a hidden football. There are usually at least 2 footballs to be collected on every section, and as there are 5 sections in each track, you might acquire 8 or maybe even 10 footballs, maybe even more than that later on as you find those hidden gems. And as I say, it's certainly worth seeking those out for the biggest scores in this game, and some of those are really difficult to get to, as we shall see later on. But in general, scoring in this game is a matter of collecting the flags and going through those points gates, and the number of points you will collect by going through those gates is indicated on the banner, which stretches on the top. You can see I'm going through the 250 there, and time gates as well, and another 100. So sometimes it's possible to gain the score simply by concentrating on the gates and collecting those up. But as I say, if you collect the flags in their correct order to gain the flag bonus, that is another 1,000 points. And when the flags are flashing, the player will usually get 6 seconds or so to collect the flags in any order. So by gaining the flag bonus, it's sometimes possible to chain a number of flag bonuses, one after the other, if you manage to collect 5 flags while they are all flashing at the same time. And so you can get multiple flag bonuses over and over. It's just a matter of collecting those 5 flags within the time bonus to get those to trigger another flag bonus all over again. That's the hardest boulder. Each stage in the game has a time limit, and each stage will probably take the player at least 60 seconds to complete. So the whole track can be completed within 5 minutes usually, give or take a number of crashes. So as long as there are at least 60 seconds on the clock as you drive through each gate, it should be possible to get through to the next section, particularly if you don't crash and you collect all the time gate bonuses along the way. And if you don't crash at all and are certainly very good with the time, you might end up with a maximum of 99 seconds on the clock to complete each stage. And of course, if you reach the end of each track, you'll gain 250 points for each second remaining. So if you have many seconds remaining, that will certainly be totaled up for a large bonus. And I like to complete these levels with at least 20 seconds remaining to add to that score. And any time gates collected on the 5th stage will also be multiplied by 500 points at the end to give another 750 point bonus if you manage to collect all those. And so the player will definitely require a measure of accuracy to get those bonuses, to get those time gates and all the points gates along the way. And the control of Buggy Boy is, well, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. One slight knock on the joystick will career the vehicle probably into the next lane, so you have to be accurate there with those driving abilities. And certainly that applies on the East course, because you have to judge a really tricky jump towards the end of this 4th stage here. And there it is across that river, because there are rocks on the bridge, and if you collide with those, obviously you'll lose time. And also this football is tremendously difficult to hit, and I've only achieved attaining that football once without crashing into the adjacent boulder. It really is difficult, but worth it, as long as you don't crash into those walls, as again you might lose 10 seconds waiting for the game to reset. So it really is important to get those footballs, but again, some of those are really difficult and require not only patience but tremendous accuracy as well. And even though you might say this game runs fairly slowly, it's still difficult to judge those things, and it can be so easy sometimes to miss bonuses or to miss time gates simply by not hitting those dead on. Sometimes it helps to drive straight through the time gates and straight through the flags to make sure you hit those, because if you are a few pixels out, left or right, you might miss those. And certainly jumping through time gates as well. If you go straight through the middle of those, you'll get them, but some time gates later on actually require us to jump over logs to get there, and they do require some tricky timing jumps to get those time gates. But here we go, this is the end of the 5th section on the East course, so that's another goal complete. Let's skip on through to the bonus and see how much we got for that one. Again, there's probably a maximum of maybe 135, maybe even 140 points there, so 135 is a great score on this track. And then we'll move on to the next track, which in this case is the West course. So let's jump in and check that one out. And again, the first thing the player will notice on the West course is the scenery changes. In the west, we'll find skyscrapers and things like that on the horizon. So the scenery does change from level to level, even sometimes stage to stage on this game, reminiscent of the arcade version, which is good. At least the sprites change and everything else, even though the bonuses don't change, and the flags and everything else, the road layout and it can be said puzzles on this game do change. And as I say, it can be quite puzzling sometimes as we try to work out the correct route, the correct road, to collect the maximum number of bonuses, to collect all those footballs, to collect all those time gates. and so the player will have to memorise these stages and to get the most out of the game, particularly memorising where all those hidden footballs are, of course. And so this game isn't a pushover. The off-road may be the easiest track, and it certainly is the easiest for the beginner because it gives the player the maximum amount of time. And the hardest course I'd probably say is the north course, although I have to say north, south, east and west can be equally hard sometimes if you keep going off, crashing. So it all depends on the player's ability to memorise these levels and collect these items. And as I always say, practice makes perfect. Well, it certainly does on a game like Buggy Boy. On the downside, there are a number of issues which spoil the game. As I said, the frame rate could have been improved. The sound effects are pretty average. In fact, the Commodore 64 sound effects were somewhat better in many ways. Certainly the music and the graphics are average. They're not amazing, to say the least. There's no copper backgrounds, sky textures. The days don't turn to night again like the Outrun Europa game we reviewed. So the game could have been better. And there are a number of bugs in the game. As I say, sometimes the player can be frustrated not to collect certain gates and certain bonuses just by missing those things by pixels and getting rocks and boulders. It can be so easy to drive straight past those and miss those completely. Crashing on certain levels, particularly the north level, but even east and west as well. If you crash, then you will write off your chances of completing the entire game because the time limits are so tight. But probably the biggest drawback in this game is a bug, which means if you crash at high speed a number of times, the game will randomly freeze, and it's certainly infuriating to go through these stages and to acquire a tremendous score only to crash once and the game freezes and you have to reset and try again. And I've certainly experienced a number of crashes, particularly on the WXD load version and the ADFs. Maybe the original disc, the original game I used to have, the boxed original on the Amiga. I didn't find any crashes, but then again, it's been so long since I had that game, it's hard to remember. But certainly the freeze bug is there in the conversion, the ADFs and the WXD load, so that's definitely one to watch out for. But on the positive side, at least the game gives you a nice big high score table, and the WXD load allows you to save those high scores to disk, which is terrific, particularly in competition play. The overall feel of the game is certainly playable, and I'm sure the player will find the more they play this game, the more playable it becomes, until, as I say, the game either freezes or they crash too many times and write off the level. But the more the player finds all those hidden bonuses and finds the correct route, or at least the most appropriate and the easiest and the fastest route through the levels, then certainly they will find the game much easier. Is this game arcade perfect? Well, as we saw with the Super Hang-On review, probably not. Certainly not in the graphics department, or the speed, or the smoothness, but maybe in the playability zone, it certainly ranks up there. Don't forget the original sit-down cockpit arcade machine cabinet had a full-size steering wheel, a gas and a brake pedal, and also a two-stage gearbox there, so to transfer those mechanics to a single fire button joystick is a compromise, it has to be said, and there are no extra special features for driving wheels and things like that. If they should have existed for the Amiga, I'm sure there were a number of driving wheels available, but there are no special mechanics like that, and it's up to accelerate and back to brake, which can be annoying to some players, but I don't find that too difficult, particularly when the buggy reaches full speed. You can leave the joystick alone and simply steer left and right pretty easily. So here we go, this is the West course completed. It's the usual high score, Only 13 seconds remaining though, so that gives away the fact that a number of crashes will detriment us over the length and the entirety of that course. So let's just total those bonuses up and see what we get. 133,000. That's not bad. That certainly isn't bad at all on that course. And you'll notice there's even a time limit on the high score table, which is another novel feature. And so we arrive at the final course on Buggy Boy. It's the South course. It's hard, so let's check it out. Some of these stages actually remind me of Outrun, with the palm trees and the water there, and it's possible to get a wheel into that water and splash around, and the player will traverse a number of shallow water crossings as well, but it certainly doesn't have the speed or the playability or the graphics of Outrun on the arcade, but it certainly has more speed, more playability and better graphics than the Outrun conversion on the Amiga. So thank heaven for small mercies. And here we go, this is the South course, and you can see I'm in the flag bones there. Oh, look at that, that's a tremendously difficult ball to hit and requires us to slow right down, and we even missed the time gate by trying to do that. It's probably still worth doing it because it's 2,000 points, and if we lose maybe 4 seconds collecting those extra footballs, then we may lose 250 times 4 is 1,000 points, so we're still 1,000 points up there by collecting that football, even though we lost the 4 seconds of time. So certainly worth doing if the player can find those and get in there. But certainly the time gates are difficult on the South course, and so through these 250s there's another time gate and I missed it again, so it really is difficult sometimes. I was right on the edge there of that log. Oh, and I totally missed the way there. I think I should have gone to the log to the left, but never mind. There is certainly a route to get through these things, and missing that route at your peril. So these bushes, those bushes will slow the player down a little bit, but at least it's not a crash like hitting those boulders. So on to stage 3. Any more hidden bonuses there? No. The player might think there are bonuses everywhere, so it's just a matter of finding those and hitting the right mark, avoiding those barriers. You can slip through tiny gaps there. In fact, you can slip through gaps that you wouldn't even imagine you could do if the player is fast with those reactions like this. Get in there and get onto the ramp. If we get onto that ramp, we can switch off those two-wheel antics and hit it again. It really is tremendously difficult driving on 2 wheels, so if that can be avoided, do so. And so I've crashed quite a number of times now, and I've only picked up 2 time gates. Again, this is the 3rd section where I've only picked up 2 time gates in a row. Let's try and get that one. Oh, I've just managed it. So it is possible, if you just get in there, it is possible you can be tremendously lucky and unlucky in this game. Bang. So that's probably why the scores aren't amazing for this game. Zap gave it 92%, Commodore User gave it 80%, the Amiga Action gave it 78%, Amiga Computing and Amiga User International gave this game 80%. So 8 out of 10 there. The Lemon Amiga viewers gave this, I think it's a 7.2 out of 10. So above average, you know, still in the realms of good. Not immaculate, but still good, still highly playable. Spoilt by lousy music and questionable collision detection and freezing in some conversions, but apart from that, you know, it's certainly a mixed bag. But apart from that, bang, let's just hit that one in and sneak into that 500, get the time. And that's another thing about this game. Sometimes you can drop it down to first gear, get across the track, collect what you need to collect. Whoa, that's tight through there. And then bang it straight into second gear again. And maximum acceleration is gained in first gear up to about 150 kilometers per hour. And then you can gear up into second gear from there. Stage 5, this is the final stage. So yeah, bang. Sometimes it's possible to gear down, whip it across the track, get those multiple bonuses. And in some sections of the game it even requires us to slow right down, as you saw with those difficult footballs hidden in those boulders. And I wanted the 500 there, but it's difficult to get into that section without crashing. I've tried it any number of times, and most of the times I've crashed on there, but still I'm losing quite a number of time here. But for my money, it's still probably better to go for those gates and to collect those points bonuses, because every bit helps, certainly. Missed the 500, but collect that. Look at that squeeze through the tree there, and desperate to get off 2 wheels now to try and get through these and get the flag bonus. Got the extra football and made the jump. So that's it. That's the end of the level, the end of the game, and the end of this review. Just the small matter of getting to the goal and collecting that bonus. So that's Boogie Boy. Let's see, I managed to have 20 seconds remaining on that level, so let's see how much score I gained. Probably the maximum is 135,000 points, somewhere in the region, and I've scored 128. So even though I'm sure I collected 98% of the footballs throughout that game and throughout that level, I didn't quite hit the 130k barrier. But just in case there are people out there that still think this game is tremendously jerky and tremendously slow, I'll just give you a quick play on the Amiga 4000 or 40 version, and here it is. You'll certainly find the game plays much more quickly on the Amiga 4000, and so fast in fact that it's virtually impossible to play the damn thing. So thank you for viewing this extended play guide to the 1988 Elite Classic Boogie Boy. Hope to see you again soon. Cheers.